SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Hey, FanDuel, you got a quarter? Hope you have a Scrooge McDuck-like vault of them, because a change in Illinois sports betting taxation is going to get very pricey and potentially have huge ramifications not just for operators, but for bettors. We're talking the Land of Lincoln's plan to change operators' regulations and charge $0.25 at least per bet on today's episode of iGaming Daily. iGaming Daily is brought to you by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. I am Jessica Welman, managing editor of SBC Media, joined by Tom Nightingale, who is editor of CGB Magazine, de facto editor of CGB website, someone I'm assuming everyone's going to want to talk to at CGS in a couple of weeks, and has a job title that is just, in my mind, lifesaver right-hand man.
Thank you very much. I don't think that'll all fit on a business card, but I appreciate it.
We'll try. Yeah, we have a new CGB they can pick up in Toronto, right? We'll have a new magazine out?
Yes, we certainly will. So please, if you are going to attend, please do pick up a copy, because that's a lot of hard work from a lot of folks.
I know how much Tom puts into this magazine, and you all should check it out. So, all right, enough about Canada, we're going to move down south a little bit. You caught this on the weekend you caught it before Monday. I only saw it first thing Monday morning. What the heck happened in Illinois this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Illinois has looked at the way that Ohio has so readily changed or tried to change its tax rate and thought, we're going to up the stakes here. They're certainly getting creative with it, aren't they? I'm not sure how... I'm sure we'll get into this, but I'm not sure how some of the operators... In fact, I think I am pretty sure about how some of the operators are going to feel about this. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly a flat fee per bet placed. I know we've heard of a handle tax before, but this is pretty much a new one. And considering they already, obviously changed to the sliding taxation scale of revenue, to then add this on top is quite the gambit, really, I think.
Yeah, so this is basically the second time that Illinois has gone back in and gone to the coffers of sportsbooks to address budget shortfalls. This was part of the budget, right? It was tacked onto a budget bill, and that's, as we know, usually when I use the phrase "under the cover of night," it's because something got tacked on to a budget bill. And the gist of it is that on the first $20 million of wagers an operator accepts in a year, each individual bet the operator will be charged a quarter. And then it scales up to as much as 50 cents?
Yeah, 50, I think, beyond the first.
How much handle do you have to do for 50? A fair amount. I mean, my understanding is the 50-cent amount is basically designed purely for DraftKings and FanDuel to hit that number, right?
It does seem very much the case, doesn't it?
All right, so Governor J.B. Pritzker in Illinois is going to sign this, in which case the new tax charge is going to go into effect July 1st. I'll be honest, I haven't read the bill. I'm going to assume that July 1 going forward is when we start the countdown to 20 million versus retroactive. This is just wild. All right, before I rant about it too much, how much is this bringing in for the state? Do we think? Have they kind of thought through and offered some numbers on this? It's like 80 million, right?
I think they suggested it was going to generate about, I think it's $36 million annually.
36. Okay. Yeah. Oh, the impact is on EBITDA is 80. Yeah. So $36 million, which isn't nothing, but it's also not a ton. You're not going to I guess you can maybe build a park or two, but with $36 million, you're not transforming the Illinois infrastructure. Okay. For the operators, though, this is going to hurt quite a bit. You already have to consider that with the graduated tax scale, FanDuel and DraftKings are paying around 40% on revenue. And then now to pay on each individual bet is going to get extremely expensive. I know that we've been saying DraftKings and FanDuel a lot over the past 3 minutes. Do you think that they're really going to hurt more than other people on this one?
I mean, proportionally speaking, yeah. I mean, I would have thought so, based on, you know, the fact that they're, like we say, they're already paying so much more on the sliding scale, and given the sheer amount of betting activity that goes on across those two platforms, you know, there's a reason that, from what I've read and from what I can tell, most of I think it was something like the Sports Betting Alliance said that they launched, because this was all quite last minute, right? They launched like a last minute email campaign.
They got Gronk involved. What I would give to be a fly on the wall for that phone call. Listen, Gronk, it's FanDuel. We need you to send out a tweet real bad.
Mm.
And what's going on? You know, I'm a FD sportsbook guy, and Illinois is trying to take away gambling. Fill out the form to let them know you want to keep betting. Like, seems in the game of telephone, things got a little murky on what Gronk was supposed to say, but we take what we can get. Sorry, continue.
Exactly, yes. But I mean, yeah, it seems no real coincidence that that campaign seems to have been led by FanDuel and DraftKings, mostly within the SBA, because I think I saw some, I can't remember, so I'm not going to cite stats off the top of my head because they will be wrong. But I think FanDuel and DraftKings between them sent a whole lot of communication to people trying to urge them to do this, which obviously we've seen before in the past from other proposed state measures like tax increases. But the big difference here is that, as you say, this sort of went on in the night and came out of nowhere very quickly. So there was not very much time for them to react to it. Similarly, there's not very much time for them to prepare for this happening. If this comes in, July 1st, crazy to think we're already in early June.
And you've got to figure out a system to geolocate all of the Illinois bettors.
It's asking a lot, I would say. But then I am not a lawmaker, so... Yeah,
you also... So, like, for those who are not hip to U.S. geography, take a city like Chicago. It's extremely easy to get to Indiana or Michigan where you don't have this. And depending on how it comes down and if consumers have to eat it, it'll be interesting to see if Indiana in particular gets a boost back up, because it certainly got knocked down a peg when Illinois rolled out. I think the biggest question here is, as operators, what do you do in this spot? Do you push the charge onto the customer, or do you just eat it, or do you change pricing in a way that isn't as obvious to the Illinois bettor? But certainly the savvy bettor will see, okay, the line is a little, like the VIG's a little better in Indiana than it is in Illinois, but maybe the average person betting SGPs is not going to notice that they changed the odds that much. I mean, we don't have an earnings call session coming for a few weeks now, but just like to put it in your shoes, what do you do if you're BetMGM here?
It's a shame that we don't have an earnings call coming up, isn't it? Because it would be.
I don't know if you can hear the alarms in the background in my house, but that's me calling in an earnings call. Like, we got to get somebody to talk about this.
I mean, in terms of what happens next and what I would do as an operator, I mean, I think in some ways it's inevitable that this gets passed on to consumers in some way. I think I wouldn't be surprised. Probably, I think what we'll see is, to your point, like lines moving a little bit. I think it's going to be hard to ask consumers to sort of front up and swallow this themselves, because when you're the two, particularly in the event of like FanDuel and DraftKings, when you're the two biggest operators and you're making so much money and you're handling so many bets and everything, I think a lot of people's attitude, certainly a lot of lawmakers' attitude, seems to be, well, kind of suck it up. Like, you're making a lot of money, suck it up, more money for the state. But what's going to be really interesting, I know we talked about this with a few other people at SBC, like what's going to be really interesting is to see whether we get anything like minimum bet amounts or changing sort of the kind of markets that are available or anything like that. Because when you've got like a 25-cent flat fee up to 50 cents, which will be hit in, certainly in some situations, does it disincentivize operators to take smaller wagers? I think that's an interesting question. Because if I don't know about you, Jess, but I'm not an avid bettor, and when I am a bettor, I'm a pretty low stakes bettor. Like, I like to sprinkle.
I'm a $5 girl.
Yeah,
like
I like to sprinkle a few dollars here.
If I really like it, 10 or 20.
Exactly. Like if I'm feeling bold one day, maybe I'll slap $10 down. But as somebody like me who puts down a few dollars here and there, that operator is going to be looking at me as a customer and thinking, well, are you as a customer now kind of less, are you almost less use than you were, are you less use in July in Illinois than you were in June in Illinois? Because now when you put down like a $2 bet, even at the 25-cent rate, like if an eighth of my stake is no longer yours as an operator, then surely you are going to be incentivized to try and get me to bet $50 at a time rather than $5 at a time.
While trying to tout an RG message.
Right. Yeah.
We're going to mull over how you do that, and I'm going to offer my thoughts. But first, I'm going to give Tom a break to prepare for the ranting.
Join us for SBC Summit Malta from the 10th to the 12th of June. With over 75 exhibitors and more than 250 expert speakers, our expanded agenda covers all aspects of the European gaming industry. Get your tickets now at sbcevents.com.
All right, welcome back to iGaming Daily. We're talking about what operators do to both mitigate this and also not be completely horrible to customers. I agree with you. I don't think, given the surcharge debacle that happened with DraftKings when they were trying to address the tax rates of rough states like Illinois and New York, I'm inclined to believe nobody goes that route again. What does make me question, especially if you're a smaller operator, if you have, like your point, we're betting $5 and $10. There are plenty of people out there betting significantly less than that, especially on those same game parlays. So just anecdotally, I have friends who show me, like, I dropped $1, I dropped 50 cents. I like to do like teeny tiny parlays. And if I hit, I win like $15 or whatever. If you're doing quarter parlays, even if the house wins, they don't make any money because they've got to pay the surcharge and they've got to pay taxes on it, which, I mean, granted is like hundredths of a cent, but still. You also have people who will bet the same bet multiple times, right? Like if the line moves, like I'll put $1 and then put $1 down again and put $1 down again. Like, I do think I'm going to be on the operator's side here. I don't think it's unreasonable to say, okay, going forward, our minimum bet is $1 and get rid of anything under $1. And yeah, I mean, I guess you can say like RG messaging is bad for that sort of thing. But like, I mean, if you walk into a brick and mortar casino, it's very difficult to wager less than $1 on anything. I suppose at video poker, there's like penny slots and video poker and whatnot. But like sports betting, you can't go up to the desk and hand them a quarter and be like, I would like to wager on. Like, it just doesn't happen. That I don't think it would be that crazy to put forward some sort of limitation on the minimum bet is this. What I'm curious about, though, is to see who has to take these steps and who doesn't. Like FanDuel and DraftKings are big enough behemoths that they can arguably eat some of this. If you are this mid-tier, Fanatics, Bet Rivers, Caesars, trying to think who else is in Illinois, Circa, who is already like a low margin business through intent. Granted, they do cater to like higher rollers that this might not impact them as much. I'm inclined to believe it's just as bad, if not worse, for these mid-tier people that are never hitting 50 cents than it is for FanDuel and DraftKings, because they don't have the excess capital to just cover these bets each time.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. It's difficult, isn't it? Because I sort of understand we hear a lot, obviously, through legislation and everything, but like we hear a lot of the argument from operators about, oh, you'll push people back into the black market. That's almost become a cliche, I think, when arguing for pretty much anything.
Cue my eye roll.
But what I will say is that, given that you think that certainly, yes, mid to lower tier operators are going to have to implement some kind of pivots here, it must be pretty frustrating, I think, for some of these operators, particularly sportsbooks who certainly would offer online casino if they could, would like to offer online casino. We hear a lot as well about, well, if you want to generate more revenue for the state, why don't you take this other avenue of online gaming that we all know is happening and use that as your revenue generation. So to have a state like Illinois, I think the SBA called it, I can't remember the exact wording they used, punitive. I think they called it discriminatory as well. And I do kind of understand their ire in this regard, because when you think that Illinois, what was it, 15% of revenue was the flat rate until they made the sliding scale change. And now all of a sudden, if you're, not even if you're a FanDuel and DraftKings, even if you're a mid-tier one, you are suddenly on the hook for so much more than you were even, like 18 months ago.
Yeah, so this is also, to the SBA's point, Rush Street is not normally an operator that you hear talked about in the whole government affairs thing. But given that Rush Street has a very powerful presence in Illinois, I think it is not unreasonable to suggest that they have a fair amount of influence, more so than in other states maybe, on how these things go down. I'm going to take you all back down memory lane 5 or 6 years. Illinois was also a state that when online sports betting launched, they had that in-person registration requirement for a while, where before you could start your account, you had to physically go to the casino that you wanted to bet, like the Four Queens, I think it was, is DraftKings. You had to physically go to that casino, show your ID, sign up, and then you could bet online. And if you are a Rivers Des Plaines, which is very close to Metro Chicago, it's going to be a lot easier for you to activate people than you were if you were kind of one of the, pardon my insult, boonier casinos out there. And then COVID came around and that was suspended because it was just like, okay, well, it seems unnecessary to require someone to go and do this in the middle of a pandemic. And that kind of threw a wrench into things and didn't hurt FanDuel and DraftKings as much as possible. There also was, I'm going to get it wrong, so I'm just going to apologize in advance. There was some sort of measure put in where, like, it involved basically giving favor to people who owned land-based casinos versus partnered with land-based casinos. And I think actually, like, there were discussions about these operators physically, like DraftKings buying Four Queens. Like, I think it actually did buy Four Queens now that I'm thinking about it. In other words, there's some contention here and has been since the inception of online sports betting and retail sports betting in Illinois between smaller groups and with a less big of a market share and a bigger land-based presence in Illinois and the FanDuels and DraftKings of the world that are coming in. I'm curious what the Rush Streets of the world think of this, because I don't think that JB Pritzker or some person completely absent of any sort of gaming knowledge was like, I have an idea. A gradated betting scale where you tax people per bet they place. Like, somebody planted this somewhere, and I'm very curious which group feels like they are most going to benefit from this. It's possible this came from a politician. I've seen it somewhat happen before in Missouri, where someone, in an attempt to put a poison pill amendment in, wanted every time somebody logged into a sports betting app, the operator paid a fee, because it modeled in Missouri, every time you a customer physically walks into the casino, the property is charged a fee by the state. So they're like, well, we want to mimic that on the app, where it was like $1 or something. It was something insane that if you checked in to check your bets 12 times, it was going to just bankrupt the company. So it's possible somebody with no gaming intel whatsoever did this and is just being greedy. It remains to be seen. We're going to know in the span of a couple of months what's going to happen in terms of how this looks to the end user. But I think this is one where not just those of us in the industry, but bettors themselves are going to be potentially very upset with how this settles out.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it's just, I think it's indicative again, like it's increasingly difficult not to put conversations like this in the wider context of the big issues that are happening in the industry at the moment. So like while you've got states like Illinois and governors like Pritzker, quite frankly, trying to squeeze every last drop out of online sports betting now that it's legal and regulated that they can. You have, I mentioned already, like the kind of iCasino discussion that we hear going on a lot about, well, if, there's a big source of revenue there waiting. And then while all this is happening as well, you've got, dare I say, Kalshi and Robinhood and crypto and these prediction markets who are offering, if it quacks like a duck, it's a duck, isn't it? They're offering the equivalent of sports wagering without being subject, certainly currently, to all of, politicians' whims about changing the rates and basically moving the goalposts in the state. So for operators, it must be, I think, a fairly difficult time given everything that's been going on this year. And there certainly seems to be wind in the sails, I think, of tax changes. How many other states are going to be looking at Illinois? Like once revenue numbers start coming out in the months down the line, and Illinois can point to not just projections of how much money this change has made, but how much money it's actually making. I know Illinois is a very big market in terms of handle and revenue, but you've got to think that there are going to be politicians in other states looking at this, and who knows where we'll be come sort of January 2026 when we're starting another legislative session. People might be looking back and light bulbs going on above their heads,
Yeah. And I think, to kind of close out this discussion, it's very easy for an Illinois lawmaker to say, where can I get money, raise a tax, and not have blowback? And it's from sports betting operators who do not employ people in Illinois, who do not have a presence in Illinois in a more meaningful way. So we're seeing this across the board. This isn't just Illinois. We'll have something up on SBC Americas here, hopefully by the time this is posted, looking at Ohio's suggestion to start taxing handle in addition to revenue. And again, like Illinois, it would be the second abrupt change in how things work in that state for operators that agreed to come in on very different terms. And it's not just FanDuel and DraftKings that are hurting here. I think for me, the biggest takeaway is smaller books like a Circa, or in Ohio, a Prime, a BetJack, they specifically came into these states because of the state of play. And to have it change so extensively and rapidly and seemingly have no end in sight on how expensive this is going to be is just a really fast way to kill a regulated industry. And on that happy note, we are all out of time. So check out our follow-ups as we find out more on how operators are going to react to this news from Illinois. Check out our updates on the Ohio numbers and how those will kind of look. And of course, check out Tom's never-ending legislative coverage, because even though it's June, it's all you write about.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily Podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network, or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.